Hey crafters, it's Amanda here again. So today, by request, I'm going to do a tutorial on how to do a granny square. And if you're not sure what a granny square is, you might hear that and be like, okay, is this like ugly crochet? Is this like outdated? But it's actually not. It's really cool and there's lots of modern applications. So let's first talk about what it looks like. This is an example of a granny square. The idea is that you have, it's as the name implies, it's a square pattern. And you work around in these kind of blocks and you add more blocks each time you go around. This is one that's done in different colors. Let's look at this pillow here. So you work this in the round. So you can see right here there's like a 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks, and the next one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And you can kind of see how they form these squares that get bigger and bigger. But it has this cool open texture. This right here is a baby blanket that I'm working on. It's not done yet, but you can make some really pretty patterns. If you do just a variegated yarn like this, it's turning out beautifully. You can do it in multiple colors for different results. And here's an application of a granny square. You can make a pillow out of it. I've also seen lots of ideas on making like ponchos and things. There's lots of really cool ideas. So let's get started on the tutorial. So before I show you how to actually work this pattern, I want to talk about how the pattern's set up. As I mentioned in a previous video, this is worked in the round, and I explained that in another video. So what that means is instead of working back and forth in rows to make this square, we're going to work in concentric, not really circle, I guess concentric squares, where you have a center and you go around and around and around and get bigger. So if we look at this, the way the pattern works is you have these little, we'll call them clusters of a stitch, and I'll explain how to do these. And on each square, you're going to have 4 sides, 1, 2, 3, 4, that make the square. And you're going to have these corners here. And the way the pattern works is with each expanding round, you're going to have 2 clusters in the corner, and you're going to add an extra cluster in between. So if you look at this row, this one has just 1 on this right side. And so 1, 1, 1, 1. But when we get to this square here, if you can see the pattern, we have 1, 2 on this side, 1, 2 on this side, 1, 2 on this side, 1, 2 on this side. We come out to the next row, we've got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So hopefully you can kind of see the pattern. And when we're building the pattern, we're going to have these clusters and we're going to have spaces. And in the spaces, we work the cluster. So right here we have 2 clusters on this round, and there's a space that was right here. And so we work the cluster from the next round into the space between these 2 clusters. And in the corners, we're going to work 2 clusters to create that edge, and that's what keeps this from being a circle, and that's what makes it a square, because we create these corners. Okay, so now that you kind of get the idea of what we're going for, let's look at how we actually start this. I've got my ball of yarn here with my handy hack so I can find the end, and I actually finally wound this ball of yarn up. You might remember it from one of my other videos where it was super messy, but it's now a nice ball, so it's easy to work with. So as with all crochet patterns, we're going to start with a slip knot and insert the hook. Because we're working in the round, we need to create some kind of center or some kind of ring that we can work in. So to do this, we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and to form our ring, we're going to slip stitch in the 3rd chain from the hook. So 1, 2, 3, we're going to put our hook in there. And if you remember how to do a slip stitch, you yarn over and pull through everything. And now it's kind of hard to see right now, but we have this nice little ring, and we're going to work our stitches in there. So we use double crochet stitches when doing a granny square, so we need to chain 3, 2, 3, and each cluster that I showed in this, each cluster is made of 3 double crochet. If we look at this guy, it's 1, 2, 3. So we're going to make our first cluster, and the chain counts as our first double crochet. So we've got 1 double crochet, 2 double crochet, and 3 double crochet. This is our first cluster. So this first cluster, this is going to be one side, and we're going to do another cluster here, and a cluster here. So if we think about this, if this is a side and we're going to do the next side, we need to have a corner. So in the corners only, we do a single chain, and that's going to be the spot where we'll work the corner of the next row. And now we're going to do another cluster, which means we do 3 double crochet working into the center. 1, 2, and you may notice I'm working around this tail end here. I'm not going to pull it tight because with the granny square you kind of have that center hole, but then it gets this guy out of the way so I don't have to weave it in. So here you can see the pattern starting to form. We've got 1, 2, 3 double crochet in a chain to make the corner, and that's our first side. And now for this side we're doing 1, 2, 3, and now we're at the corner. So since we're at a corner, we need to do a chain. And now we're going to repeat this process until we have 4 clusters. Alright, so it's kind of hard to see, and the pattern will be more easy to see as we make further rounds. But you can kind of see we've got a cluster, a chain for the corner, a cluster of 3 double crochet, 1 chain for the corner, a cluster of 3 double crochet, 1 chain for the corner, and a cluster of double crochet. And now when you work in the round, you join with a slip stitch at the end of each round so you don't have this just kind of awkward shape, but so it's actually closed. But remember, this is a corner here. We still need to do a single crochet, a chain to create that corner. So we're going to do a chain, and then we want to join this. And so to join, we just insert into the top of our first double crochet, which is this chain 3, and we do a slip stitch and pull it through everything. And that is our first round. Now, because we're working in the rounds, when you work in the round, most of the time you keep the same side facing you. So when I worked on this, I never flipped the work over like we do when we're working in rows. So I'm not going to flip the work over. However, we do need to get to a corner to start. So I'm going to slip stitch along here. So I'm going to do a slip stitch in the second double crochet and a slip stitch in the third double crochet, and that's going to bring me to the corner. And then I'm going to do 1 more slip stitch in this corner chain space. So now we're in the corner and it's time to work on our next round. And since we're in a corner, we're going to do 2 clusters. So chain 3, and now we'll double crochet 2 more to finish the first cluster. And this one, it's not going to be on this side, it's going to be on this side. So since we want to make the corner, we're going to do another chain, do 1 chain to create that corner, and then we need to work this second cluster in the same spot. So we're going to do 3 double crochet in the same spot as before. And that's going to create the corners. If you look at this one that's larger, you can kind of see, here's the center, and you can kind of see this pattern coming out from the corner. And it's kind of, you can see the pattern kind of makes a big X across the blanket. So now in the corners we do an extra chain between clusters, but this next one we do is going to be on the same side. Remember, round 1 had 1 cluster on each side, so round 2 is going to have 2 clusters on each side. So we're going to work our next cluster here. But because we're not going around the corner yet, we're not going to do a chain. So we're going to have our cluster of 3 double crochet, and we're going to go right to the next spot and do another cluster of 3 double crochet. There goes my ball of yarn. So 1, 2, 3. And that's going to finish that side with 2 clusters, 1, 2. So now that we are at the corner, we will do a chain. So chain 1, and then do another cluster in the same spot because it is the corner. And just, I'll go ahead and remind you of this. Now that we're going to the next spot, since we're going to be on the same side, we're not going to do a chain here. We only do a chain in the corners. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this round. Alright, and here I am finishing up. And now last time, because we joined in the corner, we did an extra chain before joining. But if you look at this, these two are on the same side, so we don't do the extra chain. Extra chains only happen in the corner. So I'm just going to insert my hook into the top of that cluster and do a slip stitch. And here we are at the second round. And from here, the pattern's going to continue in the same idea. When you get to a new round, you're going to slip stitch across the stitches until you reach the corner. So just like 2 slip stitches, and then I slip stitch right in the hole there. And then I'm going to chain 3. And I'm going to finish a cluster on this side. Since I'm at the corner, I do a chain 1. And then I do another cluster in the same spot, which means I double crochet 3. And there we go. Now I'm starting the next row. Now from round 3 onward, you're going to have extra spots to work in the middle. And you're going to, remember, if round 1 has 1 cluster on each side, round 2 has 2 clusters on each side. Can you guess how many round 3 is going to have? Yep, it's going to have 3 clusters on each side. 1, 2, 3. And so you just work the clusters in each spot. And since these 3 clusters will all be on the same side, we do not do a chain between them. So let me work this side, do a cluster here. Okay, so here I am, I know I'm at the corner because I've done 1, 2, 3 on this side, because remember this first one is on this other side. And so I'll do a chain to make the corner, and then another cluster in this same spot because it's the corner, and then I'll just work 1 cluster across each round. And so in each spot I work 1 and then 2 in the corners, plus I have the chain between them, and I'll join here, and then when I get to the next round I'll just keep repeating this pattern and I'll end up with a nice beautiful granny square. So here we are with our finished granny square. I went ahead and I wove in the ends, and you can see it creates this cute little pattern. And I will get a actual pattern that you can read up on my blog soon for how to do a granny square, in case you're still not sure about how the repeating pattern works as you get to larger and larger rounds. But that's all there is to it. And if you have any questions, comment below. Let me know if this tutorial was helpful. I hope that it helps you in your projects. And until next time, happy crafting! So I couldn't think of anything funny to do today. So instead I'm just going to stare into the camera and see how long I can go before I blink. You should click these things. Click them. And subscribe. Oh, I blinked! No! Okay, let's try it again. I'm not gonna talk this time. Okay, I can't do this with my audio, too bad. Okay, I tried. But in the meantime, you should click there, and you should subscribe to my channel, and you should click there for some more great videos.